So Prince Edward Island was, for a solid decade, it was Canada's absolute growth miracle.
Oh, totally.
Just bursting at the seams until suddenly, in a single quarter, the population actually shrank.
Yeah, it's wild.
And then you throw in some looming, massive U.S. tariffs threatening to just hammer local agriculture, and your gut instinct might be to expect mass panic.
Right, a total fire sale.
Exactly, a fire sale. And yet, the stack of very fresh economic notes and market analysis we have in front of us today points to something entirely different. The real estate market on the island right now is totally fine.
It really is.
In fact, the data firmly points to buy and hold market.
Yeah. There is just this massive disconnect between the scary headlines you might be reading and the actual underlying math.
Yeah.
Because you have all these turbulent variables swirling around, but the core foundation of the island's economy is, well, it's holding completely firm.
Which is why the title for today's deep dive is Two Storms and a Lighthouse.
I love that framing.
Thanks.
Yeah.
If you live on the island or if you're on the mainland thinking about making a move, you know there is a ton of noise out there right now.
So much noise.
So we're going to cut through that anxiety today and give you a clear, confident picture of the island's fundamentals.
Right.
We're going to look at the two specific storms battering the market. But to really make sense of them, we have to start by looking at the lighthouse.
The anchor.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this. What is the massive anchor keeping PEI so grounded while everything else just shifts around it?
Well, that anchor is predictability, and it starts directly with the Bank of Canada.
Okay.
For the last few years, the economic ground everywhere felt like it was just, moving under our feet.
Totally.
But right now, we are looking at a policy rate that has been held at 2.25% for 6 consecutive announcements. Six.
Which, after the absolute roller coaster of the early 2020s, that feels like a lifetime.
It really does, and it fundamentally changes the psychology of the market.
Right.
Policymakers are laser focused on keeping inflation within that 2% target. But what's crucial for you to understand as a listener isn't just today's rate, it's the horizon.
The forward curve.
Exactly, the forward curve, which is how the financial markets price in where rates are going to be in the future. And that curve predicts this exact stability through the rest of 2026.
Wow. I like to think about the last few years like trying to land a commercial airplane in a massive crosswind.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Because buying a home or expanding a business, signing a lease, it felt like gripping the yoke and just praying the wind wouldn't shear at the last second and push your monthly mortgage payments into the stratosphere.
Right, just total panic.
Yeah, but right now, that crosswind is just gone. The runway is clear. A buyer qualifying for a mortgage today isn't gambling on where rates might land next spring.
No, they actually know the math. And what's fascinating here is the cascading effect that kind of financial predictability has on human behavior.
How do you mean?
Well, economics isn't just numbers on a spreadsheet, right? It's about how confident you feel making a 5-year plan.
Yeah, that makes sense.
When financing costs are locked and predictable, this massive invisible tailwind of confidence sweeps into the market. A local business can accurately project their overhead for the next 18 months.
Because the ground isn't shaking.
Exactly. A family knows exactly what their carrying costs will be. They don't have to build in some massive margin of error just to survive a sudden rate spike.
Right. And the stability isn't just coming from the central bank either. There's a second bulb in that lighthouse, which is the provincial politics.
Oh, absolutely.
We just saw Premier Rob Lance sworn in, taking over after former Premier King's resignation.
And the defining characteristic of that political transition was how incredibly boring it was.
Which is exactly what you want.
Exactly. In the grand scheme of economic health, boring politics is highly lucrative.
It really is.
There was no governing crisis, no snap election throwing provincial policies into limbo, no radical shift in taxation or zoning laws.
Just business as usual.
Yeah, it was a completely orderly handoff. When businesses or prospective homebuyers look at Prince Edward Island right now, they see a stable central bank paired with a stable, quiet provincial government.
So we have our lighthouse.
We do.
The ground has stopped shaking. And because financing costs and the political climate are finally predictable, the real estate market is undergoing a major structural shift.
A huge one.
So if housing inventory is recovering, the immediate question is, what exactly does this new reality look like? Let's talk about the first storm.
Right.
Although looking at the data, it feels less like a destructive storm and more like the weather finally clearing up.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. The real estate market has officially exhaled.
Thank goodness.
I know, right? The pandemic-era frenzy is structurally over. The days of blind bidding wars, unconditional offers, waiving home inspections just to secure a modest bungalow.
Just utter chaos.
Yeah, that era is finished.
So let's put some real numbers to that so you can see the landscape.
Mm-hmm.
In June, the benchmark price for a home on the island sat at $383,300.
Okay.
That is up, but a very modest 1.4% year over year. Meanwhile, the average sale price came in at $410,105.
Right.
Let's pause there for a second. We have a benchmark price and an average price, and there's almost a $30,000 gap between them.
Which confuses a lot of people.
Yeah, so why give both? Which one should our listener actually care about?
You should always pay closer attention to the benchmark price. Averages can be incredibly misleading in real estate.
How so?
Well, if 2 or 3 multi-million-dollar waterfront mansions sell in a single month, it pulls the average sale price way up, making it look like housing suddenly got wildly expensive for everyone.
That's dicey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the benchmark price uses a specific formula to track the price of a typical home, like your standard 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house.
It filters out the noise.
Exactly. It filters out those massive outliers.
That makes perfect sense. So the typical house is sitting around $383,000. But here's the metric that everyone watches, the inventory.
The big one.
Yeah. The data shows that months of inventory rose to 5.9 months. For context, the long-run average for PEI is 5.1 months.
Right.
So we are sitting above the historical average.
We actually spiked up to nearly 7 months of supply back in February, and now we've settled down just under 6.
Wait, hold on. I'm looking at 5.9 months of inventory, which is higher than the normal 5.1.
Yeah.
My immediate gut instinct as a buyer is that a crash is coming.
Sure, that makes sense.
If there are more houses sitting on the market than usual, why aren't we seeing fire sales? Why isn't the market plummeting if supply is building up?
That is the natural fear, definitely. But it comes down to understanding the mechanics of forced liquidations versus a balanced market.
Okay, unpack that.
Let's define the term first. Months of inventory simply means that if no new homes were listed starting tomorrow, it would take exactly 5.9 months to sell every home currently on the market at the current pace of sale.
Right, got it.
When you have 1 or 2 months of inventory, that is a frenzy. Sellers dictate every term.
You're begging to buy a house.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you climb up to around 5 or 6 months, real estate boards categorize that as a balanced market. This isn't a crash.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the phrase used in the sources that captures this perfectly is that the market stopped sprinting and started walking.
So it's equilibrium.
Yes. A true crash requires distress. It requires people being forced to sell homes they can no longer afford, which floods the market with desperate listings.
But we aren't seeing that.
No, because think back to our Lighthouse. Because we have stable 2.25% interest rates, people can afford their renewals.
Ah, right.
We aren't seeing a wave of forced liquidations. No one has to sell at a massive discount.
Which means buyers finally get some breathing room.
Exactly.
You can actually sleep on it. You can schedule a second viewing in the daylight. You can, mandate a home inspection without your offer being thrown in the trash.
What a concept.
Right. And sellers who price their homes honestly, based on what the neighbor's house sold for last week rather than the peak of 2020, they still getting paid.
It is a profoundly healthy dynamic, even if it feels slower compared to the chaos of the last few years.
So the first storm is really just a transition back to sanity.
Pretty much.
But if the housing inventory is recovering, the immediate question is, where did all the demand go? We used to have people lining up down the street for those bungalows.
Oh, literally?
To find them, we have to look at the actual people moving in and out of the province. That brings us to storm number 2. And honestly, this is the real headline of our deep dive today.
The population plot twist.
Here's where it gets really interesting. For a solid decade, Prince Edward Island was essentially Canada's demographic darling.
It was.
We are talking about a massive 5-year population growth rate of 14.7%. That was the second highest in the entire country.
Which was an absolute anomaly for Atlantic Canada. I mean, it's a region that had historically struggled heavily with population retention.
Right. Everyone used to move west.
Exactly. PEI was bucking every historical trend.
But then comes Q1 2026. The data shows that the population actually declined.
Yeah.
PEI lost 286 people in a single quarter. And interprovincial migration, so people moving between provinces within Canada, turned negative for the first time in years.
It's a huge shift.
You go from a 14.7% growth miracle to suddenly shrinking. That is incredible whiplash.
It is. And our sources tie this directly to recent federal immigration cutbacks.
Okay, let's look at that impartially.
Right. Impartially speaking, when you look at immigration purely as a demographic lever, the mechanics are very straightforward.
Yeah.
The federal government reduces the national target for new arrivals. That means fewer people landing in major hubs like Toronto or Vancouver.
Right.
Consequently, fewer people are getting priced out of those cities and moving eastward in search of affordability. The influx flowing into PEI simply dried up at the source.
It's a massive shock to the system, though. Losing 286 people in 3 months. Is this the end of the PEI boom?
I wouldn't call it a bust. A better analogy would be a massive engine that was running at redline for 5 years.
Okay.
It was overheating. This population decline isn't the engine dying, it's the thermostat finally kicking in so the gears don't melt.
Oh, that makes sense. So that engine cooling down explains exactly what we are seeing in the housing market.
The causality is direct. If you have almost 300 fewer people looking for accommodation this quarter, that instantly removes a massive layer of pressure from the rental market and the starter home market.
Which allows that inventory to build back up to 5.9 months.
Exact.
Because the structural pull of the island is still there, right? Yep. The lifestyle, the safety, the community feel. The island didn't suddenly become a terrible place to live. The tap was just turned down federally.
Right. That structural pull remains incredibly potent. It prevents the market from collapsing and allows it to level out into that balanced territory we just discussed.
Okay, so we have the internal weather system figured out, rates are locked, housing is exhaled, and the population engine is cooling down.
We do.
But PEI doesn't exist in a vacuum. It is heavily reliant on export and trade, which brings us to storm number 3.
The big one.
Yeah, there's a massive external weather system brewing down south, but the way it might impact PEI's housing market is completely counterintuitive.
The Washington wildcard.
Exactly. The sources highlight that new U.S. tariffs of 50% are set to hit a range of Canadian goods, specifically targeting dairy and alcohol.
Right.
And this takes effect in just a few days, on August 19th, 2026. Right now, Canadian officials are locked in frantic negotiations trying to mitigate the damage.
And we have to understand the micro-level reality of a 50% tariff. This isn't just a slight dip in provincial GDP on a spreadsheet somewhere.
No.
This is a direct hit on agriculture, which is a foundational pillar of the island's identity and economy.
Let's ground this for a second. If you are a local dairy farmer on the island, a 50% tariff means you suddenly can't sell your product into Maine or Massachusetts without a massive, completely uncompetitive markup.
Your margins evaporate overnight.
Exactly.
And that cascades immediately into the local community. If that farmer loses half their margin, they aren't upgrading their equipment this year.
Right.
So the local tractor dealership feels the hit. The farmer cuts back spending at the local hardware store, the grocery store, the restaurants in town. A headwind like this threatens entire rural supply chains.
It's like a physical hurricane hitting the mainland coast. You watch it happen, and you know the economic debris is going to wash up on your shores.
Absolutely.
It sounds universally bad, but here is the fascinating twist. Does this external economic turbulence on the mainland actually help PEI's real estate market?
Well,
I mean, if the rest of the continent is locked in a chaotic trade war and inflation is spiking in Toronto because of it, does a storm on the mainland push people to seek shelter on the island?
if we connect this to the bigger picture, history absolutely supports that counter-narrative. When mainlanders feel economically battered, they don't retreat from places like PEI. No, they actively flock to them.
Because the island looks like a safe harbor.
Think about the daily news cycle for someone sitting in a tiny, overpriced condo in Vancouver or Toronto right now.
It's grim.
They are reading about trade wars, corporate layoffs, gridlock. Suddenly, the psychological appeal of a quieter, more insulated life skyrockets.
Oh, for sure.
This is exactly the audience that marketing campaigns like Hello PEI have spent millions trying to reach.
The pitch basically writes itself. Come to the island, we have a stable government, our mortgages are predictable, housing is actually balanced, and you can just step away from the chaos.
It becomes an incredibly attractive proposition. So paradoxically, the very trade war that severely damages the agricultural export sector could serve as a massive demographic magnet.
Wow.
It draws remote workers, early retirees, tech professionals to the island, which in turn financially supports the housing market and replaces the demand that was lost from the recent immigration cuts.
The tariffs might hurt the farms, but the chaos of the tariffs sells the houses.
Basically, yeah.
That is an incredibly complex ecosystem. It really proves you can't just look at one metric, like a population dip and assume the sky is falling.
No, you have to view the entire board.
So what does this all mean? We've navigated the three storms, the transition to a balanced housing market, the engine cooling on population growth, and the looming Washington tariffs.
Right.
And we've kept our eyes on the lighthouse, the locked-in interest rates, and the quiet political climate holding it all together.
Yep.
Let's bring this down to the ground for you, the listener. What is the ultimate bottom line? Let's say you own property on the island right now. What is your play?
If you are a current owner, the data strongly suggests you hold your ground.
Okay.
Do not look at the 5.9 months of inventory and panic sell into a normalizing market. The fundamentals we discussed, the stable rates, the enduring lifestyle appeal, they just do not support a crash.
So stay put.
Yeah, your asset is safe, so let it sit.
And if you're a buyer, maybe you're that person in Toronto tired of the mainland rat race looking at the island as a safe harbor.
For buyers, you are looking at a very rare window.
Really?
Yes, you have rate stability, meaning you can sit down today and accurately budget your mortgage for the next 5 years. And because inventory is sitting near 6 months, you have genuine selection.
You don't have to just take whatever you can get.
Exactly. You have the time to find the right property, do your due diligence, and negotiate fairly without competing against 10 other blind offers.
That sounds like a dream compared to a couple years ago.
It really does.
And lastly, what if you absolutely have to sell right now? Say you're moving for work or downsizing.
Sellers need to ruthlessly align their expectations with the present data. You must price your home to the 5.9-month reality.
No more expecting a bidding war.
Completely forget the memories of the 2022 frenzy. If you price honestly based on today's comparables, you will still get paid. But you cannot price a home hoping to spark a bidding war that structurally no longer exists.
Right. It's all about adapting to the weather in front of you, not the weather from 3 years ago.
Exactly. But, analyzing all these sources together, this raises a really important caution. One that extends far beyond just the next few fiscal quarters or the current housing cycle.
Where does your mind go with this?
Well, think about the opposing forces of that third storm we just explored. Let's say these 50% U.S. agricultural tariffs become a permanent, long-term reality.
Okay.
That would severely degrade PEI's traditional foundational farming economy. But at the exact same time, mainlanders continue to flock to the island specifically for its lifestyle calm and remote work viability, propping up the housing and service sectors.
Right.
Does Prince Edward Island eventually transition away from being primarily an agricultural powerhouse?
Wow. That is a massive shift to contemplate.
Does it evolve over the next 20 years into primarily a remote work and retirement haven?
I mean, it could.
And if that economic base fundamentally flips, if the tractors in the fields are steadily replaced by fiber optic cables and home offices, what does that mean for the cultural soul of the island?
That is definitely something to chew on long after you finish listening today.
Yeah.
Because if the very thing that makes the island beautiful, the rural agricultural heritage, gets economically hollowed out by tariffs, well, the people moving there are coming purely for the scenery.
The entire identity of the province shifts.
It really does.
Yeah.
It's not just a real estate question anymore. It's an existential one.
Absolutely.
Well, we set out today to figure out why the data points to a buy and hold market, and I think we found our answers. The storms are real, the population is shifting, trade is turbulent, and the market is definitely walking instead of sprinting.
Yeah.
But as long as you keep your eyes on that lighthouse, the stability, anchoring the math, the foundation holding everything up is rock solid.
Could not agree more.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into two storms and a lighthouse. Keep your eyes on the horizon, and we'll catch you next time.